In Module 4, we will discuss briefly the clauses in ISO 9000. Now, as I've said earlier, uh, this is not something that I actually deal with myself, and so I'm not really going to go into too much of detail as far as the various clauses are concerned. But basically, there are 8 clauses, out of which 5 are the ones in which the first 3 are more definitional in nature, and the 5, which is starting from 4, that is QMS continual improvement, 5 that's management responsibility, 6 is resource management, 7 is product realization, and 8 is measurement, analysis, and improvement. The way in which they are all related to each other, ultimately it is customer satisfaction that provides the impetus for doing everything. We have input requirements, which obviously comes from the customer, and through our process of product realization, we generate a product, and that product could be a service if we are a service organization, and that is then evaluated against our basis of what the customer expects, and we determine the customer satisfaction level, and that is used to drive the various 5 clauses or the elements of the 5 clauses in the ISO standard. And I will briefly just list the clauses. I will not talk much about them because that is really not an area that I do work in, and I think it is something, number one, you will get a more detailed discussion of in a course on quality management systems if you do take that course subsequent to this one. And secondly, when you actually get involved in the application of the ISO standard in your organization, that is the time when you will actually get to understand how these various clauses apply. So the first clause of the ISO 9000 standard defines the basic scope, which is define it. It says what is the purpose of the standard and so on and so forth. The second clause provides references to the basics and the vocabulary. The third clause is terms and definitions that are used in the various standards. Then the fourth clause relates to quality management systems, and what the requirement of this is that the organization will establish, document, implement, and maintain a quality management system and continually improve its effectiveness. And the various things that are required as part of the documentation are the quality policy, quality manual, etc., 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 as you see over here. And again, just listing these by itself, I don't think makes a whole lot of sense, at least not for us. But when you get around to actually implementing this, that is where you will need to actually understand what needs to go into a quality policy document, what needs to go into a quality manual, how do you need to document the procedures, etc., etc. The fifth clause has to deal with management responsibility, where we say that top management will focus or will show evidence of commitment to the development, implementation, and continual improvement of QMS. And this is going to be done through communication, quality policy, because these are the various tools that are really available to the top management, and it is the responsibility of top management to ensure that the QMS is not only developed and implemented, but also continually improved. The sixth clause relates to resource management. That means the organization needs to provide all of the resources required for QMS, and these will be used for the purposes of enhancing the customer satisfaction level. Resources are going to include people, infrastructure, work environment, etc. The seventh one involves product realization. That means how the actual product becomes a product from the input to the output, and this involves, there are a number of sub clauses here, that is the planning and the product realization, the customer related processes, the design and development, the purchasing, the product and the service provision, and the control and monitoring and measuring devices. So these are the various clauses which are part of the product realization. And finally, the eighth clause, which is the measurement, analysis, and improvement. What it says is that the organization shall plan and implement the monitoring, measurement, analysis, and improvement processes necessary to demonstrate how the product conforms to the quality management system. That means, how do we actually ensure that we are doing what we claim to be doing. And again, here there are a number of sub clauses, and as I said before, I am not going to go into the details of these clauses or sub clauses. Basically, just as a little bit of a recap, what are the advantages of having these kind of commonized standards? Basically, it helps customers and suppliers understand better, they have better communications, and you also provide a certain platform for continuously improving the various processes. The external audits are better managed because most of these audits are done by an external agency, and the standards being worldwide allows us to have worldwide trade in a more smoother fashion. You have increased competitiveness, and when you have increased competitiveness, quite obviously the cost goes down while the quality hopefully does go up, and it does provide us with industry benchmarks so that we are able to compare ourselves with our peers in the industry and in other areas. I think we've already discussed this, so there is really what a QMS requires is that we need to establish and document and maintain a QMS, identify the processes, determine the sequence, and determine the criteria. Okay, I think we have discussed this already. We need to ensure all of this has been discussed. Okay, these are all things that are required as part of the ISO standard, and I think that's the reason why it was stated over here, but I don't think it requires any further elaboration over here. This is the documentation that is required, and the audits will focus on the documentation because obviously the audits cannot focus on the actual processes. And the documents include procedures, process flow diagrams, plans, contracts with specifications, basically telling you what you are going to do, what you have done, and basically how you may have reacted to any gaps in your performance as compared to what you had planned to do.